Okay, let's get started. My name is David Larson. I am the Deputy General Counsel for the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission. And thank you all for joining us today for another question and answer session. Before we begin, just want to make a few announcements. We held a question and answer session last Friday, and a recording of that session is available on our website. You can go to the CompFile implementation webpage at www.iwcc.il.gov/compfile. We also just posted a updated section of the user manual regarding pro se settlements and how to successfully submit those in CompFile. There is also a FAQs document that was posted last week, and that essentially was a collection of questions that we received from our users and people who participated in our previous demo and question and answer session. So I think that's a great document. Take a look at that and should be able to find some answers to some of the common questions that we have been receiving over the first few days of the CompFile go live. As we did on Friday, the purpose of today's session is to take questions from our participants. So we're going to ask everyone to take advantage and use the question and answer function available in the WebEx chat. Today with me, I have some of the other members of the CompFile project team: Connor Gallagher, Matt Bryant, Fran Davis, and Beatrice Atwater. Go ahead and ask your questions. We will read them out loud, provide answers, and then also maybe offer a demo if the situation warrants it. So I will turn things over to Connor and some of the other team members. We'll probably kick things off with maybe some of the common questions that we have been receiving from our users over the last few days here.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, Connor Gallagher. We have about 150 people on the call today, and that's great. That's a big increase from the session we held on Friday. To start, I'm going to cover just a few things that we've seen, repeat offender questions in the CompFile inbox. Feel free to continue to ask your questions in the Q&A box here in WebEx, and we'll transition to those shortly. While I'm talking, some of the other panelists might come behind me and start answering those questions, especially if they're ones that we've have been asked of us and answered before. But to start, I want to talk about, I'm going to share my screen now. I want to talk about where to go to view your filings that you've uploaded. As we talked about and have talked about in Q&A sessions and other training sessions, most motions that you're uploading or that are being filed in CompFile is only generating the notice of motion, and that's if it's a filing that gets placed on a status call or a review motion call. Something like an appearance filing, right? That is not placed on a status or review motion call. Therefore, a notice of motion is not generated. But if you've uploaded a pleading with that appearance, and maybe even a proof of service because you're serving to somebody outside of CompFile, there's a couple of ways that you can view those documents. And one way is on the actual case details page. This is a case that is chock full of filings. You'll see here, I've opened the case details page, and if I scroll down, I have this arbitration events subgrid. And this is just a list of filings that happened while the case was on the arbitration level. You can see here, this is the appearance by the respondent. If I click this view print button, what happens is it's actually going to show me the filings that are and I got a glitch, pardon me, sorry about that. I'll go to something that I uploaded. So if I go to this request for hearing, what I can see here is the actual the actual pleading that I uploaded with the request for hearing, as well as the notice of motion. Well, here I can just see the pleading. Well, this is the pleading that I uploaded. And if I want to see the notice of motion, what I can do, I'll back out here for a second. Let's remember this case number. If I go to my motions and other filings page, one of the views that I have is my filed motions. It's the third one down. And from here, I can search on that case number, which was 20 WC 100020. And here's that request for hearing that I filed. I have view attachments, and if I click this, I get my request for hearing again. I can view CompFile service. This tells me who received it. For whatever reason, this one isn't showing a notice of motion, but it should. So this is our training environment, so sometimes the data is a little wonky, and I apologize for that. But essentially, this is where you can go to view the pleading that was uploaded. And then once it's dispositioned, so you'll see here that this is granted, I can click View Order on Motion. And it gives me a copy, essentially a copy of the email that is sent out by the arbitrator that says, this is the disposition of this filing. Okay, so that's one thing that we've gotten a lot of. One common question that we still are getting asked is about making filings on off-cycle call dates. So if you want to follow, if you're downstate, you follow your arbitrator to another setting within their zone, or if it's Chicago, just essentially skipping the line of the call dates. CompFile is set up that the only file designed to give you a selection of other call dates is the petition for immediate hearing under 19B. With other filings, with any other motion type, you will have to pick one of the return to call dates every 3 months. Okay, and it was designed that way on purpose. And I realize people have been asking, well, I need to get something in ahead of time, and earlier than that. And we realized that because of COVID, there have been a lot of extenuating circumstances and changes to the way that we were used to doing things in order to accommodate filings. But the way that CompFile was designed and always was envisioned to be designed is if you're making a non-19B filing, you pick a return to call date. If you have something like an agreed pleading that doesn't need to be scheduled for pretrial and just needs to be motioned, some arbitrators are in the practice and have been in the practice of dispositioning them off the call cycle. The example that comes to mind is an uncontested stipulated substitution, right? Depending on the arbitrator, they might be willing to go ahead and grant that ahead of time. But some arbitrators have made it clear to us, working the CompFile support team, that they're still going by the book of, we wait for the call date to do any dispositioning, scheduling and dispositioning of motions. Some arbitrators, they're more accommodating. It ultimately comes down to what that arbitrator's preference is. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover just off the top of my head of some common questions. I see that we have about 30 here pending in the WebEx, so I think it's probably about time to transition to those.
Connor, there's a question about modifying the attachment on an application after your client has signed the application.
So if you're, and is the question, is the ask that, is the attorney modifying a paper version of the application, or
There's an attachment, like the proof of service is dated today,
Oh,
but
okay.
the e-signature is applied tomorrow. So they want to go back and update the proof of service to tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So what you would do, um, so similar to how we implemented changes needed with settlements. Let's see if I can find. I don't have any in one of these statuses. Here, I'll just start an example really quick. You can do changes needed on an application, and that would be what you do if you need to change one of the uploaded documents. So let me just get the bare, start of an application going. And then I can do save and exit and hopefully show where that button lives. So I'm going to jump out, applications. This one just shows edit. Well, essentially, once you have a settlement in petitioner signed status, if you come to this drop down arrow, you will see an option that says changes needed. And if you click that, the status reverts to draft, and you are able to make edits again. And you'll be able to change fields and then also attach documents.
And then I think the follow-up question is, when you route it for signature, maybe the petitioner doesn't sign it that day. They wait a day or two to sign it. And I think the answer is, unfortunately, you're just going to have to coordinate with the petitioner to say, stand by, let's do this now, as opposed to letting it, lapse a day. And then the other alternative is to use signature on file. So if the petitioner will sign the thing by Docusign, they can do that, then you would just mark your app as signature on file, and then whatever date they signed via Docusign. So if you print down an app and send it by Docusign to the petitioner, then whenever they apply their Docusign signature, then you would choose signature on file and put that date in here.
Go ahead and keep the questions coming while I stage this.
So here's one. I haven't tried to file a new case in CompFile, but can I fill out the app and print it so that I can file it and then file my proof of service after I make the mailing? So you won't be printing and filing anything with the commission. You'll be completing the filing in CompFile. So you need to, on your proof of service, you'll need to put the date that you served that app. So you could print down and serve the app and then put your proof of service that you served the app, whatever day you did that, and then you complete the filing. You could definitely stage it that way, but it's really not, it's not any different than if you were to file an app with the commission. You have to include proof of service. So if you walked up to the desk, a month ago, and you handed your app to the desk and they stamped it in, it would have to have a proof of service on it. So whenever you hit the button to file it in CompFile, you need to have your proof of service on it, and that should have the date that you serve that on the employer, and that you are allowed to print down the app when you're filing it in order to serve it. So, and Connor will get to that point soon, because you're doing an app right now, right, Connor?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So when Connor gets to the proof of service page, which is right there, if you just go back one, please. So you're going to be adding a proof of service here in order to print the document You select proof of service. You don't have to attach the document that you served. You're going to be submitting that in CompFile. All you need to attach is a proof of service. But if you do want to print it before attaching it, you can do that. You just click next. And then you eventually land on this page that has a print button, which is right here. So you could print down, the app right here.
It takes a while to spool up because it's our training environment, but you can see this will be a version of the application you can use to have your client sign if you're doing signature on file, and also to serve outside of CompFile whenever you need it, or for just your personal records. I'm going to add my petitioner signature so that I can show the changes needed button. Once I add the signature here, if I click save and exit, the status of this application is now petitioner signed, and you'll see I have changes needed available.
Excellent. Thanks, Connor. So if you do decide you want to change your app after your client signed it, you just go to your My Draft Applications and click Changes Needed. And then what that does is it resets the signatures, and you need to get a new signature. If you want to use the e-signature option, you can. But if you want to time it, if you're concerned that the petitioner might not sign it until tomorrow, even the next day, you'd want to coordinate with them to make sure that that was accurate. Another option is to use Docusign. Someone was talking about Docusign for their representation agreement, and you can do that for the app as well. You just hit print, they sign it, Docusign it, and then you just tell CompFile that you have the signature on file, and then you have to retain that in your records. Here's a good one, Connor. Our firm has a case. We are trying to file a substitution of counsel in. However, the case has not been claimed. Can we just claim it, or does the original firm have to claim it first and then file our substitution and attorney rep agreement? And the answer to that is you can claim the case, and you would indicate the prior counsel as the current counsel of record, which they are. And then once the case is, but don't list yourself as counsel of record, just the prior counsel. And then if there's RA, I'm assuming this is a petitioner counsel. If there's respondent attorney, you would need to also indicate them as an attorney of record, because they would need to get notice of this activity. And then next, you would file the substitution of counsel, and you would say, old petitioner attorney is leaving, and new petitioner attorney, which is you, is coming on board.
And that boils down to this statement here, or will duly file a written appearance. I will say that I think our team was a little surprised about the number of instances where people would need to claim a case but they haven't yet appeared on, right? And we sent out that communication last week about how to claim a case if you haven't yet appeared on it. I think we anticipated that being a more fringe scenario than it is, but per what Matt just said, yep, you are able to claim a case and then immediately file a substitution or an appearance or whatever you need to. Well, I shouldn't say whatever you need to, appearance or substitution directly after.
Okay. Okay, here's one. We filed a request for hearing, but no notice was auto-generated by CompFile. Do we have to file a notice of motion in order document? So there's a known issue with when you file make the filing in the system, there's a print notice of motion button, And there's a known issue that unless that print button is pushed, or unless your opponent pushes the print button, that notice of motion doesn't get put into the system. It's there, it just doesn't get, it's not visible in the system. So if you were to, if you can't see it and you're concerned, you want to make sure you can check your that the you know, that the parties were served with that, and then you can also look on your case list to see when the notice is going to be put up for call. But I'll just show the process. The safest way is if you, until this issue gets fully resolved, is to click the print button, and that way you know you've got it, and then you can just download it and save it. So Connor's going through the process of making a filing right now, putting the attachment on it. He selected the call that's coming up. Did you choose an arbitrator call, Connor? Or you even remember?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
May 14th.
May 14th, right. So the safest way is just go ahead and click print notice of motion. What that does is it depends on if you actually put it to a printer and put it on paper. You don't have to do that, but it just downloads into your browser. And then you see it says filing notice of motion. You click on that. There's the document, and you can view it. But once you click that print button, then it becomes, you know, sort of, I guess, permanently viewable. But if you don't click that print button, then it's there. It's just that it's not visible until you click the print button. And you can always come back and find it in your list of filings and click print that way. Show, if you wouldn't mind, Connor, the list of filings, and then you can see when the call is, the May 14th call. So before you jump, if you go back to the home page, Connor, again, please. So, you know, just to orient you a little bit, you know, the cases show all the cases that you've claimed, and that's where you go to claim a case. And then the motions would show you the filings made in CompFile on those cases. So if it's a legacy filing, it's not going to be there. And then you would see any of these filings, and then you can look right here that this case, Connor v. Respondent Company, is a Chicago setting, and it's up on the status call on May the 14th at 2. And then you can look at the, say, view service, I think, CompFile service. If you view it, here's the notice of motion that you clicked print on, and you can always come back and look at it.
Yeah, this is what I was trying to show earlier. And couldn't show just with that old filing I had made. But then, yes, CompFile service.
And this would show you who got served with this. And then you can also look at the email, as I recall, Connor, if you hit the back button. No, the email is not showing up on that one.
Well, the view order on motion would be once this is dispositioned, and that's what I was saying before. Once this is disposition granted, withdrawn, whatever, CompFile sends an email to that effect, but you can also come and view essentially a copy of that email message by clicking view order on motion.
Connor, are you able just to display Travis Thornberry's email account to see the email that he got on this 2138 case?
Easier said than done, but give me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to pause the screen share and I can get that.
Okay, so while he's getting that, I'll just point out that when you look at the email, it contains the notice of motion information as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can see that. So I hope that's addressed that question. While he's looking that up to show us the email, here's another question. Why do we have to wait? Dave, I'll turn this one to you if I can give you a heads up on this one.
Sure.
Why do we have to wait 90 days in some cases to have a stipulation to substitute attorney entered?
And that's consistent with the rules that stipulation to substitute attorneys should be included as part of a notice of motion and order. I think as Connor indicated at the top, if this is something that needs to be done more quickly, then you can reach out to the arbitrator and they can approve that on your behalf or grant the stipulation so that you can gain access to the case and do your subsequent filings.
And then the follow-up question is, how would you, and I think you just answered it, but just to recap, how would you file a 19B in 30 days when you're not the attorney of record because you're waiting 90 days to file your substitution? And the answer that Dave was giving is, if you can contact the arbitrator, and if it's a stipulated substitution, they can approve that off cycle, or they could wait to the call. But like Dave was saying, according to the rules, that is not one of the motion types that can go out of sequence. But again, you are able to contact the arbitrator. Okay, so back on to the notice of motion issue. So here's the email that the person received, and only one attorney was on this particular case, Travis Thornberry. So this filing would have needed to be served on the respondent outside of CompFile because there's no respondent attorney. But this shows, that the status call for the Chicago case of May the 14th at 2, and then the filing type was a fee and penalty petition. So again, this is something that the arbitrators see as well. So when that filing is made in CompFile, the arbitrator can look at the filing, and then they can look at the email history and see that that this petitioner attorney made this filing and docketed it on such and such 4/27 at 11/22, and then docketed it for May the 14th. So you don't need to attach your notice of motion. This is a long way of saying you don't need to attach that notice of motion as an attachment because all of that information's in the system. So Dave, I think I'll turn this question, you want to, yeah, thanks Connor for doing that. Dave, I got another question for you, if that's okay.
Yes.
What if a pro se does not have access to a computer? And I think I would suggest that we break this into two pieces. Let's just deal with pro se settlement contracts first. So if you've got a settlement with a pro se, and I can take that one, and then I'll do the other one to you, and that is, what about just a pro se litigating their case? So the pro se settlement contract, if they can't use a computer or they don't have access, you can meet with them, you can have them sign the contract, and then when you're drafting and submitting the contract in CompFile, you would use the signature on file option. You're still going to have a hearing, a virtual hearing with the arbitrator and that pro se. So they're going to have some kind of computer access, either at your office or somewhere in order to conduct that hearing. But if they don't have access to a computer and it's a pro se settlement contract, then I think the most straightforward answer is for them to access the system and conduct the hearing from your office or from some other location where you can be with them with a computer. Now, in terms of just litigating cases, Dave, I'll toss that one to you.
Sure. Similar to the mandate that was made in the circuit courts, all litigants must use CompFile to file cases and documents with the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission. So we have built out a new section of our website for pro ses to find resources about the steps they need to take to gain access to the system and make their filings. Connor, can you quickly pull up the IWCC website? I'd like to show people on the call that
Sure thing.
section where they could find that, and this might be something that they can. So if you click the resources for at the top there, there's a resources for pro se. And there's some information here for pro se litigants. And then additionally at the bottom, we put together a one-page summary of the process for pro se settlement contracts. That document is something that respondent attorneys can direct a pro se petitioner that they're dealing with in terms of trying to get a pro se settlement contract reviewed and approved. You can point them to our website and they can take a look at that document and better understand the process. Just to kind of give the respondent's attorneys a little more coverage when dealing with pro se petitioners.
Here's a question. Will documents that are filed be file stamped? No. Anything that you're attaching using that create document set feature, nothing is being file stamped. We've covered in other sessions that you can go in any filing, right? Because not only do you have a view in this motions and other filings of things that you filed, but also things that your opposing counsel have filed. You can see the date filed in these views. And you can also see it if you're using the new case search lookup. You can see when filings were submitted.
Connor, can you just click on Initiate Filing? And then click on Initiate Stipulated Substitution. So there's a question, how do I file a substitution? And then what you're going to do is you're going to have to do this. You identify the case that you want to substitute on. You don't have to have an appearance yet. It does have to be claimed. So that was something we addressed earlier. You can go ahead and claim the case before you do this, if it's unclaimed. And then but you wouldn't add yourself during the claiming process because you're not yet an attorney of record, but you would choose a claimed case. And then once you choose the case, then you're going to identify who's leaving and who's staying. It's just that simple. And then once that substitution is approved by an arbitrator, it has to be put on for call. And once it's approved by an arbitrator, then it would automatically add you and remove the prior counsel. And one thing to note is that, and this just was answered a couple of minutes ago, is that if your return to call date is 90 days away and you need to make a filing sooner than 90 days from now, you can email the arbitrator because a stipulated substitution is stipulated. And so presumably a lot of the arbitrators would feel good about going ahead and granting those as long as the documentation is there. But without that, then it would need to be put on for call. So there was a question that came a little bit out of sequence, and it says there is no notice. So I'm not quite sure what that question is. So I'll just ask that one gets re-asked. Please clarify. Okay. So this is the substitution you're still doing, Connor?
Yes, I'm just running it all the way through.
Okay.
And this would be where I actually upload the motion. You saw that, excuse me, I had to pick a status call date.
Yes, you have to choose a status call. And what you'll be presented with are the standard return to call dates for that case. And so In terms of what the service was, so first of all, you can print the notice of motion and you can see that this information, if you will, was noticed up. You know, the attached motion, and that's what's included on the attachment. And this is the notice of motion that explains that. And then, are you set up to show your email also right now, Connor? Or do you have to reshare?
I'm not. I've been going in on the staff side and just pulling out the email.
Okay, well, I can just explain it. So in that email, there's a link, and that link would be to, this information, the notice of motion and the attachment. And then you can look at the service and see that whoever was served, whoever had appeared in that case as an attorney was served with that filing. Now, keep in mind, if it's a TPA, there's no respondent attorney, CompFiles can't deliver that because this is an attorney system. So you will still need to serve that document on the attorney and when you, on the adjuster. And when you do that, you would include that proof of service in CompFile. So just to recap, if you're making a filing in a case and you're a petitioner attorney and there is no respondent attorney, you're going to have to serve what you're filing on that person outside of CompFile. The adjuster does not have a CompFile account. We're not doing, it's not an adjuster system, it's an attorney system. Once respondent attorney has appeared, then you're done. Your filings get served through the system on opposing counsel. But until that happens, you're going to have to serve them however you're serving them today. And then the filing itself, you'll need to file with the commission and include a proof of service as to how you accomplished service on that adjuster. Okay, here's a question about consolidated cases. And it says, do I need a notice of motion for each case? And the notice of motion in this particular case only shows one case number. So here's, first of all, if your case is consolidated, you can see that in CompFile by opening up the case in CompFile, and you can see that it's consolidated. And maybe, Connor, you could go find a case like that, and you could luckily you would have one in this training system, and you could show how you could see that. But when you file a motion in that case that's consolidated, you're going to choose the parent case, and the parent case is always the oldest case. And so you would choose the parent case, and you would only file the motion in that parent case. Your attachment itself, in other words, the motion itself, let's say it's a 19B petition, you can list all the case numbers on that petition, but the filing and the docketing of that motion is only going to be in the parent case. On your status call sheet, all of the consolidated cases would appear. So the arbitrator is going to see that it's consolidated, your opponent's going to see that it's consolidated, and on the status call sheet, it will show it as being consolidated. But that filing, you're only going to do it in the oldest case, the parent case. And then on your attachment, you can list out all your case numbers. The notice of motion is just getting it on that status call, but then once it's on the status call, all those cases are listed. So you're just doing a consolidation real quick, Connor? Do you need me to approve this once you submit it?
Sure.
Just need to know the case number. Well, actually, I can just look at the filings, never mind. I see your stipulation to substitute. Should I go ahead and approve that?
Why not?
Why not? I'm in the arbitration mood. Okay, we'll grant this. Granted. And actually, you can show the order on motion. Granted during training. So the arbitrator might say, granted during training. And then once this is granted, you can show what that looks like, the order on motion. All right, let me go back to your consolidation. There it is. I'm going to say also granted during training. All right, so both of those have been approved now.
So
So
you
you
can
can
see,
go, yeah, go ahead, Connor,
Mhm.
take it away.
No, you can see here, this is the stipulated substitution. See, it was granted. This last status change date, this is going to tell you, right, if this is one of the, what I call terminal status reasons, like granted, denied, withdrawn, right? This last status change date tells you when that occurred. This is when the arbitrator changed the status of this filing. You can go in, if I click view order on motion, I can see here, this is a copy of the email that the parties would have received. And then this is what Matt, posing as the arbitrator, typed in on his end when he granted this.
If you could just show the same thing on the consolidation. Also granted during training, additional information. That shows you what the arbitrator, if the arbitrator has something to say in the granting of the thing, they can do it there. But then if you would, Connor, just click on the, go to that case in your list of cases, please. Yes, and open up the case number.
You can see that I had that Magdalena case, which I didn't have before, because the substitution was granted, and now I'm a party to the case. What did you want to look at here?
Just make sure that the filing shows up there. So I think it's on page 2 in those filing list.
Oh, whoops. There we go.
And then if you scroll to the top of the page, sorry. So as you can see right there, you can look at the attachment that was filed. You can, check the status of it. And if you go to the top, you'll see that this case is a consolidated case. So the primary case is the Jablonska case right there on top. It's got the older number from 2016, and then this is consolidated with that 21 case down below. So it's it's kind of a weird example. Usually in a consolidation, the petitioner would be the same person, but not always. But anyway. And then lastly, Connor, if you would just go to your home page and remember. Let's remember what. Oh, this was already granted, wasn't it? Did you put it up for May the 14th?
Which one?
The one, that consolidation that I just granted? Here, I can look.
We can look together.
It was June the 11th.
Go to my filed motions. Last status change date. You can see the consolidation motion was June 11th.
So if you would, just go back to home and click on call sheets. It's dangerous stuff we're doing here, Connor. I hope it works.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then just try to find, let me find that case or that call sheet so I can coach you in. What was the case name? It's consolidation. Oh, it's going to be in the other case that you.
It's going to show up on the Jablonska call cycle.
Right.
Here, let me just back out and go look at it again.
Okay, thanks. I'm having some trouble isolating.
No problem.
Oh, it's a concluded motion. That's why. Okay, there it is.
So you can see here consolidation of cases. This is arbitrator Kane. in Chicago on June 11th.
Yeah, thank you.
I can go Chicago, arbitrator Kane. I'll take a minute to load.
And we're using our training system, and it's a lot zippier for you in the real system. Although this is unusually slow.
Let's answer some other questions while this loads.
There we go.
I've seen a couple of questions about withdrawing filings. Once you've submitted a filing in CompFile, you don't have the ability from your end to withdraw it. It would require somebody, a staff member, usually an arbitrator, marking that motion as withdrawn. But if for whatever reason, if it's like you made an egregious error and you uploaded, a picture of your cat instead of the real motion, right? We said this last week too. You can contact the CompFile help desk, WCC CompFile. We have a little rubric that we want you to fill out just for our own audit trail purposes, but we can essentially withdraw that motion for you.
And then I was just trying to show where you can hit the little plus, Connor, and see the consolidated cases. And it actually, now that I'm mentioning this, it may not show because the motion wasn't granted when it was filed, but I have a feeling it would.
Let me just type the name. Jablonska. Did I spell that right?
Jablonska.
I know it was 16 WC.
And I'm afraid it's not showing up because we granted the motion.
Okay.
So, but maybe, if we could find a consolidated case on one of those, on the, what is it, the 11th call? I can do that, and I'll find one. I'll find an example we can show.
Okay, let's hammer some of these other questions in the meantime.
I do know that there was a question, Connor, that under case details, the party's information is listed. However, the city and state are not listed. Is there a reason why it's not listed? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I was hoping that you could.
I think it's talking about the parties here. Primary location, address line 1. The main reason is just because with CompFile, right, most filings are being electronically served to the attorneys once they appear. If if you have a reason that you need to serve something to party via mail or outside of CompFile, that's I won't say that that's your business, but essentially that's CompFile for the most part is out of the mailing business, and as a result, the addresses that are listed here are less important. And we've also seen a few times now and I made mention of this at last week's Q&A. When people are claiming their cases, they'll mark that the address line 1 and address line 2 of petitioner and respondent records are the same. And that's just a symptom of how we migrated case data, and it's something we had to live with. And the reason that we're living with it is because, again, we're not outside of that first motion when the app is filed, excuse me, not motion, that first notice of that first status call date. We're not mailing anything. IWCC are not mailing anything. All that's to say, I mean, if there is a need and there is an interest, we could theoretically explore adding some other columns here. But I think for the most part that, and I might be wrong here, but I think for the most part that's not needed.
So will documents that are filed be file stamped? And the answer is no, they won't. You can establish the receipt and the delivery in the system, but there's not a separate stamp applied.
Let me just quickly show how you would file an amended app. So if you claimed a case, you can tell that this one is claimed because it's 16 WC number and it's also all caps. You can file an amended app in claimed cases, right? So if a case that wasn't created in CompFile but just claimed, this is how you file an amended app on it. The amended application web form is slightly different for cases that were claimed. You won't have that list first table of parties. And then, but it's the same button for case that was started in CompFile. You go to the cases list, initiate amended application, you're off to the races. One other thing, and this came up last week, and I did some research after the Q&A. So going back to call sheets, so call sheets and the new case lookup page, they actually use a third-party tool to display information. And this tool, if you're using an older web browser, if you're using Internet Explorer or a not up-to-date version of a web browser, you might be experiencing where you click on call sheets and it's just a blank page. And that's just because you need, a more up-to-date web browser. The way that this is designed is after you make a selection of a setting in an arbitrator, CompFile behind the scenes starts loading up the call sheet records. Until that time, nothing is loaded. So if you get as far as seeing these filters and you make your two selections and then you get a loading screen, that does take a while. And the reason being is you're loading thousands of records. So I just ask that if it is working for you and it's just taking a while to load, just please be patient. That's, this is how it's designed. Somebody asked, is Jablonce's their case? Will this mess up their records? Nope, this is our training environment. I think that's the first time that's happened. If you, sorry, I muted myself. Question about viewing, clicking a link in an email when a filing is submitted, how to view that. We actually added language to our email templates that you need to be logged on to CompFile when you click that link um, in order to view that filing. Otherwise, you might get a "you don't have permission to view this record" message. And unfortunately, that's just a limitation of the product. We tried to explore doing, prompt you to log on, and that if you're not logged in, you log on and then you view the filing. But that just wasn't possible. So if you're ever in a situation where you're clicking on a link to view a filing, then you'll need to make sure that you're logged in.
There is a question on a voluntary dismissal, and it was about, can it be placed off cycle? And the answer is no. Only the 19B selection can be placed off cycle. If you are so bold, you can contact the arbitrator and ask them to rule on it off cycle, but that's between you and the arbitrator. Only the 19B option can be placed off cycle. But a note on the voluntary dismissal, there's a known issue where when you file the voluntary dismissal, the filing email gets generated as well as an email that says your case has been voluntarily dismissed, and that is not accurate. The case, you still have to appear at a status call or resolve it directly with the arbitrator off cycle, but you still have to appear at the status, or virtually at the status call, and get a date, or else get it resolved at the status call. And that is a known issue, and I think it might have even been addressed today, but it'll be addressed in the next day or so.
I see a question here. What exactly do we have to attach with the motion for pretrial? I'll answer this question in a more general sense. So whenever you're filing a motion in CompFile, it's only set up that you attach something. You'll notice that when I'm going through and I'm making these different motion filings, and I get to that create document step, I get different options in that drop-down list of document set type. Usually proof of service and other supporting documentation are always listed, and then there'll be a document set type pertaining to that specific filing, like stipulation to substitute attorneys. CompFile just cares that you upload at least one of those, right? Usually if you're making a motion filing, you're actually uploading a pleading that you prepared outside of CompFile, and that's the thing that you're uploading, right? If you're serving it outside of CompFile, you might need to upload a proof of service, but it's not going to check that you have both. It's just going to check that you have one thing. So theoretically, and I'm not advertising that you do this, but theoretically, you could make a filing and upload just a proof of service, right? That kind of doesn't make sense because you're saying that you're making a filing and there's no actual content in that filing, just a proof of service. So with any motion that you're uploading, you just need to upload, you need to upload one thing to satisfy CompFile, but it's important that you upload the actual pleading that is being put in front of the arbitrator. And to that point, I'll say this again. I said it at the beginning of the call. CompFile is only generating a notice of motion for you if it's a motion that's put on a status or review call. That's the only thing CompFile is generating for all of these motions and other filings here. Right? Anything that I'm filing, CompFile is only going to generate a notice of motion if it's put on a status call or a review call. If I would need to provide the actual pleading as an upload on that create document set page. Here's a question about case search. So on the legacy case search page, that's still alive and around. That only shows data as of 4/9, April 9th. So if you use the legacy case search page to look up a case, it's going to show you everything about that case as it was in the mainframe, the legacy system, as of 4/9. If you use the CompFile case search page and there's been additional activity since then, CompFile is going to show you that updated activity. For example, if you had a case that was in arbitration status as of 4/9 and a settlement contract was submitted in CompFile yesterday and was approved today, that case would show up as settlement contract approved in the CompFile case search page, and then in the legacy page it would still show arbitration. So hopefully that makes sense as to why there's the different the different case search lookup pages.
Okay, here's a question about a substitution of attorney, and it says they claimed the case and they deleted the petitioner attorney. And we've gotten, I think, 4 or 5 questions on how to do a substitution of counsel. So I'll just recap this. Most of these questions have to do with legacy cases, claiming a case. So you want to make a filing in a case, but it's not claimed yet. And that filing is a substitution of counsel, and it has to be claimed before you do it. So the first thing you're going to do is claim the case. You have not appeared in that case yet, so you do not, and you also haven't gotten approval to remove counsel. So you have to tell the system first who are the current counsel. So you're not current counsel yet, but the prior current counsel is current counsel, and then you have to list the opponent as well. Then immediately after that case is claimed, then you're going to file your substitution. And in your substitution motion, you're going to identify who the departing attorney is, and then, of course, you're the new attorney. You attach that stipulated substitution as an attachment, and then you identify the call that it's going to be called up on, and then you hit submit. So if you want to take an action in a case that hasn't been claimed yet, and you have not appeared in that case yet, or you want to file a substitution counsel motion to appear, you have to first claim the case, and you have to identify who is now on the case. Then you do the thing that you need to do to get on that case. So I know it's a little confusing, and thanks for your patience as we deal with 40 years worth of legacy data, a lot of which was in not the best shape, as you know. And so again, just to reiterate, when you claim a case, you list yourself only if you are already on the case. If you've filed an appearance or gotten a substitution approved already, fine, list yourself. But if you haven't taken that step yet and you want to take that step, you have to first claim it, and then you say who has already taken that step, and that would be your predecessors who are still on there. You're trying to get them off. After you claim it, then you file the motion and you can get them off. And again, it's a little bit confusing. We've got some written materials on this that can maybe, until this becomes a little bit second nature, just refer to the written materials about how to claim in a case that you want to get on and you're not yet on. If you have removed someone and you shouldn't have during the claiming process, mistakes happen, send an email to CompFile support and say, here's the case number, I claimed it, and I removed the petitioner, but they're not yet removed. What do I, fix this for me? And then we'll undo the situation, and then you can proceed accordingly. So here's a question about a motion to consolidate off cycle, and the answer is only the 19B option can be filed off cycle. So when you go to CompFile and you choose 19B, you can go off cycle. If you choose anything else, you can't go off cycle. So if it's a I guess a related motion like fees and penalties, the attachment can explain what the related motion is. So if you want a 19B and penalty petition to go on together, you can put them on together off cycle by selecting 19B, and then in your attachment, you include the fee petition. And the notice of motion refers to that attachment, and everyone's on notice of that. A motion to consolidate, you can't do that with, and here's the reason why. For the motion to consolidate, you have to identify the two cases in CompFile so that when it gets granted, those cases get consolidated. So you have to file that motion to consolidate separately and distinctly in order for it to work. And you can't file a motion to consolidate off cycle. It's only going to present you with the standard return to call dates. So again, you could do that. You could contact the arbitrator and explain, please consolidate this so I can move ahead with these cases. But I will say this on the motion to consolidate, there's a little box on that filing that says this motion has been agreed to by all parties and the signed agreement is attached. And the arbitrators can see that when it comes in, that the motion to consolidate is an agreed motion, and they can go ahead and process that. And we are going to identify opportunities for highlighting some of these cases that arbitrators should just quickly dispose of without a proceeding. But right now, only the motion to consolidate has that option. So here's a question, does a motion to be dismissed have to be sent by a certified mail now? So if there's a rule that says you have to serve something in a very specific way, you have to continue to do that. So if a 19B1, for example, has to be served in a very specific way on the employer and the adjuster, et cetera, you've got to continue to do that. CompFile accomplishes service on the attorney only. So if you have a motion to dismiss that you're filing, and I guess it's motion to dismiss an attorney, if that attorney is on the case, they're going to get served in CompFile. If it's a motion, but if they're not on the case or they haven't even registered for the system, you're going to have to serve them outside of CompFile, and then you're right, you should do that according to the rules. There's another question about the notice of motion. So when you complete your filing, if you click notice of motion, you can view it. The information is there. You don't have to refile it. And the question was, do I need to refile it? And the answer is no. This is a known issue that if the person making the filing doesn't click print notice of motion, it makes it difficult for other people to see it. Most people go ahead and click it, but some haven't. And when that happens, it makes it difficult for others to see it. And we can help you to see it. But if you want to know when it was served and what the information was, you can look at the individual email and look at the service, the proof of service. So if you mark signature on file, once they sign, do we only add the date they signed, or do we also upload a copy of the signed app? And you do not need to upload a copy of the signed app, only the date that they signed. After filing the app, how do you get proof of service? And that is you're going to get an email proof of service on you. So in other words, that's proof that it was filed with the commission, and then you serve the app on the employer. So the proof of service that the service was accomplished, you're serving it by delivery, by FedEx, by mail, however you get proof of service today. So the CompFile does not serve the employer. You serve the employer. So just to reiterate that, CompFile only serves registered attorneys who have appeared on the case. So if you're filing an app, no one's appeared on that case. It's brand new. So you're going to need to accomplish service on the employer because you don't even know the lawyer yet. So you're going to serve that app on the employer the way you've always served apps on employers. And you're going to include the proof of service in CompFile. So Connor, I'll ask this one to you. If I'm filing several apps and one attorney is going to be filing a few and a different attorney is going to be filing a few, but this one person's doing them, is there a way for me to switch whose attorney filing it, or do I have to log out and log in?
No, you can have any attorney account within that law firm make the filings. And once they're submitted and the case is created, you can come to this case view, either my active cases or my firm's active cases. You would go to my firm's active cases if it was filed, if the app was filed by a different attorney than the one you're logged in as. And what you can do is come over, click the down arrow on any of these cases and click Manage Assigned Attorneys. And this button, this option is only available if you have the law firm admin web role, and you can check that by going to this law firm users button. You'll see if you have the law firm admin web role. But if you have the law firm admin web role, what you can do is from this my active cases or my firm's active cases view is I can reassociate this these cases. Let me find one that's mine. So this is currently associated to Travis Thornbury. What I can do is I can add another attorney in my firm. So Keith Scott is also in my firm, and add him. And this is only designed to have one attorney in each slot, right? When I add Keith, you'll notice that it's going to list both of us as attorneys on this case. And realistically, you shouldn't keep it that way just because it causes downstream errors. So what you then do after adding Keith is I can go in and I can remove myself as the attorney on this case. And now Keith is going to show as the petitioner attorney of record on this case, and this case is also going to show up in his My Active Cases view. So that's a way that you can get added to a case if you are filing, if someone else is filing the apps, and vice versa. You can see here that that case fell off of my Active Cases view. Well, we've certainly got a lot of questions. I'm showing 157 total, which is great. I'm hoping we've addressed a lot of these.
There's another question about, does CompFile serve a copy on the employer? The answer is no. CompFile only serves attorneys who have appeared in the case.
We know we have also received a lot of questions to the wcc.compfile@illinois.gov inbox. And again, we are working to address all of those questions. We just ask that you be patient, and somebody will be following up with you shortly.
So there's a question, this is a good question about initiating a settlement contract and opposing counsel's name, not being able to add opposing counsel's name. The opposing counsel has to appear in the case. If it's a pro se settlement, obviously you wouldn't have opposing counsel. So if it's a no app settlement, in other words, you have opposing counsel, but you don't have an app, you can add them. But if it's an existing case, then the opposing counsel is going to have appeared in that case, and you will have to claim the case. So once you claim it, mark who all's on the case, and then hit claim. Then you can file that contract, and then your opposing counsel would be listed there. And if you've already claimed it and there's a different a different counsel on there, maybe the wrong counsel, you're going to have to get that other counsel off the case. So in other words, to get them dismissed from the case or whatever, in order to not include them. If you want a different attorney within the same firm in opposing counsel to get on that case, you would contact a law firm administrator, and they can swap out, Mary for Susan or whatever, like Connor just showed. You just, change assigned attorneys. And so if Susan in opposing counsel is there and you want Mary to be there, and it's already been claimed, then you'd have to contact Susan and or Mary to have them make that switch. So for the pro se to register in CompFile, there's a pro se appearance form that they would complete. I'm assuming that this is an existing case. In other words, an app's been filed. They would just need to print down that form. It's a paper process because it has to be notarized. So the pro se would fill out that they're the pro se. They'd have to go get it notarized and then mail it to the commission, and the commission would set them up in the case. They can appear. It's a little hard to do that at the Thompson Center these days, but they can appear and then present their driver's license and fill out that form, and then it can be handled right then. And there's some information on for pro ses on the CompFile page. So there's a question about doing a contract, but it's telling them they need to claim the case. And so when you claim a case, you have to resolve the existing parties. So if there's two parties listed, you have to either add or remove or update everyone on that list. And then there has to be at least one attorney. So I'm assuming if you're on the case, you're going to be listing yourself, so that you'll satisfy that. But again, to claim the case, you have to deal with all of the existing attorneys that are on there. And then either through updating their information to add an individual within that firm, or to remove them, saying, this person left the case ages ago. Or there's also an option that says they don't have an account. You can still claim the case and move forward. But if you can't find them, you can click, they don't have an account, and still claim the case and proceed. But if it's a settlement contract that you're trying to do, you're going to have to make sure that all of the parties that have appeared on that case are all set in order to get that contract done. So the question was twofold. How do I claim it? And then how do I do the settlement? The how do I claim it? The biggest mistake that we're seeing is you got to resolve all of the existing parties, either to add or remove or update them. Once you've claimed it, in order to settle it, then all of the attorneys who have appeared on that case are going to appear on the settlement. So someone's on there and they need to get dismissed, they're no longer on the case, you're going to have to get them dismissed in order to get them off of that contract. So Dave, it's getting to be the bottom of the hour. Do you want to wrap this session and then we can take up the questions, through a posting?
Yes. So this is the last question and answer session that we have scheduled for the moment. We will review all the questions that we received today and try to update the frequently asked questions document that's available on our website. So as always, continue to check back at the CompFile implementation webpage because we will be posting new material as we go. As I mentioned earlier, we will also work to answer your questions that you've sent to the wcc.compfile@illinois.gov inbox. We have several people manning that inbox, so we're working to get through all those questions. And again, we'll also be communicating, I think, directly with our users via email to provide notice of any updated information, best practice tips, or updated instructional materials. So we do appreciate everyone's time bringing questions to the table today. I think this was a great session. And again, we appreciate your patience through this process. There's certainly a learning curve anytime there's a new system in place, but we're working to get everybody comfortable and familiar with the new system. And about a month or so, it'll be old hat for everyone. So thank you again.
Thanks, David. We'll go ahead and end it off there.